Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Today's session we will discuss ABC costing and AB activity-based management. Now, so far ABC costing is concerned, it's a new technique evolved rather than the old one, the traditional one of marginal costing or absorption costing. Now, in this particular technique, what we do normally, instead of using a single overhead rate to absorb the overhead into a production or a departmental rate, we used activity-based rates. Now, first of all, let me give you the definition given by the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants about the ABC costing. The definition is cost attribution to cost units on the basis of benefit received from indirect activities like ordering, setting up cost, assuring quality, and so on. So this is the definition given by the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants. And let me share another definition which is given by very renowned professor Kaplan and Cooper. They said the collection of financial and operational performance information tracing the significant activities of firm to product cost. So these are the two basic definitions, and now some difficulties are there in these techniques, like difficult to calculate the cost of product or services with precise accuracy. It's my experience that cost is a word which cannot be used standalone. You have to specify, qualify it, whether it is a material cost or labor cost, conversion cost, and whatever. So you need to qualify. Now, it's very, very difficult currently that how the correct cost is going to be worked out. In fact, that's the main problem. We are not clear how much it costs us to produce a certain item. So the ABC costing, and the reason being because direct cost like variable cost is okay, but the problem is of the overheads. For example, if I'm sitting here and let's see I'm using these lights, so how much light I'm absorbing, I'm using it, and what it costs to the institution, it's very, very difficult to calculate. And that's why we need to find out ways and means how to get the correct cost. Now, pricing is normally based on what the market will bear, competitors move, and so on. So again, question is, we can't just keep on adding cost and charging to our customer whatever price we want. No, we have to be very clear that there is a competition and there is a market where we are going to operate. So our cost should be, because the price is based on cost. Whatever you do, unless you know the cost, you can't fix the right price. Because we used to say that the first and foremost objective of the cost accounting is to set the selling price. Because if you don't know your cost, you can't set the right price. ABC tries to help in determining the cost correctly. Now, I'm not suggesting that you can come up with the exact cost in any case, but we should try at least that the cost should be as much as correct as possible. ABC evolved between 1960 to 1980 to produce more accurate product cost. Now, Cooper in 1990, the Kaplan and Cooper, they said there are 4 levels: unit level activities, indirect rate consumable, inspection and testing of every item produced, batch level activities, manufacturing support activities, product level activities means new product line and its maintenance, design and advertising cost, and facilities level capacity cannot be related to particular product line like maintaining buildings, salaries, advertising, and so on. There are certain costs which can relate to a unit or batch or a product level, but there are general facilities which we are providing which is very difficult for them. So they said we should separate these all levels and then we should try to work out the cost. Traditional absorption costing. In traditional absorption costing, normally what we do, we use plant-wide rate, a single rate for the entire plant, whether they are 2 department, 3 department or 4 department, but we are going to use the same rate of absorbing overhead in each department. Now, if I give you an example, if it is a furniture industry and there are 3 departments, the first one is cutting department where they cut woods into different pieces, and then it goes to the assembling department where they are going to be assembled in terms of chair, table, or sofas, etc. And then they goes to the finishing department. Now the question is how we can use one single rate for all these three departments, because in a cutting department the machine is going to be used. So you can't use labor hours as a base to work out the rate of overhead absorption. Similarly, in assembling department, the most of the job is being done by the workers. So you are not going to use machine hours there. Similarly, in finishing department, it's a composite of they are using machine as well as they are using labor hours. So we can't simply use a one single rate for all the three departments. So then we come up with the department-wise department. In case of a, let's say, cutting department, we may use a machine hours base. In assembling department, we can use labor hours base. And in case of finishing department, we can use direct wage rate. Now, how these rates are going to be calculated? They are simple. We take the total budgeted overheads, variable and fixed both, and then divide by the basis what we are going to use. But do remember, for each department we have to allocate variable and fixed cost. For cutting, this much; for assembling, this much; and in finishing we have the total cost, that is material cost as well as the labor cost, and we use the labor cost. So what we do, we divide the cutting department overheads by the machine hours and we work out per machine hours. Similarly, in assembling department, we use labor hours to work out the rate per labor hours. And then in finishing department, we work out wage cost base. Now, question is, if a production is going on from cutting to assembly and to process, you can see the rate is going to different. In cutting department, rate is based on machine. In assembling department, rate is based on labor. And in finishing department, the rate is based on direct wage cost. So in this case, this is a development. Now the ABC costing, in fact, change this all scenario. What they suggest, that instead of having plant-wide rate or department-wide rate, let's divide the entire organization into activities. What type of activities performed in each and every organization? Let's list down first. Now, it is not that simple, because it is slightly difficult to just lay down each and every activity and then find out what cost is involved in each and every activity. Anyhow, not every organization can use ABC costing, but still production overheads are high in relation to the direct cost. Suitable only where the production overhead is high in relation to the direct cost. There is a great diversity in the product range. It means here that you are not producing one single product, you are producing number of products, very different lines of products. Then products use very different amounts of overhead resources. Consumption of overhead resources is not primarily driven by the volume. So where ABC is most useful, where these characteristics are there. Now, let me give you some objective of ABC costing. To improve the accuracy of product cost by carefully charging the type and number of factors used to assign the cost. We need, as much as possible, the accurate cost of producing our goods and services. To use this information to improve product mix and pricing decision. Because if we want to set price, we must be aware of how much is the exact cost of a particular unit or a particular product or service. Then identify value-added activities in transaction. That is the most important thing basically. Currently, if we say waste is any activity which is not adding value. So we must find out from all those activities which we have separated, which activity is value-adding and which activity is not value-adding. Find out ways to eliminate non-value-added activities, because you are doing something but you are not getting any value out of it. For example, currently interfacing is word used. Interfacing simply here means that what we do throughout the day. Research is that 25% of our time is not value-adding. 75% is only value-adding. So how we can reduce that 25% time which we are just interfacing? So we work it out, the non-value added activity, and let's take out from the business. Then to allocate overheads on the basis of activities. Instead of taking a lump sum amount of total and working out a single rate, no. You find out for each activity. Those activities are called activity pools. So once we have determined the activity pools, then find out what is the budgeted overhead in each activity pool. Because that is the most important for ABC costing. Because unless you divide the entire organization into different activities, you cannot go ahead. So first of all, define the activities and then allocate. Work out what are the budgeted overhead for each activity. Then to validate the success of the quality drivers. Number 2 is find out the drivers of that activity. Mean if you are doing this activity, what are the drivers which are causing the cost of that activity. So 2 important things. First, you work out clearly these are the activity pools and these are the overheads of these activities, and then find out what are those drivers which are carrying out the cost of these activities. So once you have the cost pool and the drivers, then simply you can work it out dividing the cost pool overheads divided a particular driver associated with that particular activity, and you can work out the rate per cost driver. Then to ensure accurate product costing for decision making, to focus on the high cost activities, and that is also very important. There are small activities where we are not incurring a lot of cost, but there are big activities, large activities where we are incurring a huge amount of cost. So we must consider those activities first. Sometimes what we do, instead of having, let's say, 30, 40 type of activities, though we do it in any business, what we do, we group, let's say, high-level activities, high-valued activity, low-valued activity, low-valued activities club together. High-value activities keep it separate, and then we work out the rates for each activity. Then to identify the opportunities for improvements and reduction of cost. If you do all this exercise, I can assure you that you can come up with something that how we can reduce our cost. Reduction of cost does not mean just to scrap something here and there. No. Activities are essential, but make sure that whatever activity we are performing and the cost we are incurring, that must add value to the business. Now the steps in ABC costing. ABC costing system, the various steps we have to include. First of all, we know process specification. Identify different stages in production process. As I said earlier, in a furniture industry, we got, let's say, 3 activities: cutting, assembling, and finishing. Similarly, identify main activities. Then identify non-valued activities. Then identification of activity cost pool. Then selection of activity cost drivers. Then tracing cost with cost objective. Cost objective means it can be a product, it can be a customer, it can be even a mile, a kilometer, and so on. So what we do, we need to find out the cost per cost objective. Then staff training, the cooperation of workforce is critical. Create ABC costing awareness. This is also very, very important. Let me give you my personal experience, because in Pakistan, I did system for motorcycles company. They come and they ask me that how we can implement ABC costing system in our company. I said, look, it's a very difficult job, but if your people are really serious to do it, the persons who are in charge of that department used to be my student. He said, no, we really interested and please do help us. So I said, okay, send me those people who are involved in the costing department. So they came to me, and honestly, I did a lot of work for them. And you know what happened there? The cost of motorcycle is increasing, and in competition, the other competitors' prices are reducing. So they were worried, how come the cost is going so high that people are not going to buy, and there are a lot of other models are coming in. So when we did the exercise, I said, look, it requires a lot of hard work. First of all, let's divide the whole organization into activities. So there are 2 main activities basically which I want to share with you. One is they are producing the motorcycles, but the other part is they are producing the parts as well. So in the process, when we come then we find out that the cost of producing part is greater than the cost of producing the motorcycle. So what they were doing, they are adding the cost of producing the motorcycle previously and a margin on it. That's why the cost of motorcycle goes up. And then when we come back with ABC costing, we find out the cost of producing part is greater. So what they did, they reduced the cost, rather the selling price of the motorcycle, and increased the price of the parts. And this is how the process cost, in ABC costing can be introduced. In Pakistan, very, very few companies who are looking for that, but otherwise it is a beneficial exercise if you do it. The other thing is very important, that you start a program of ABC costing, please do review it and follow-ups. Periodic review and follow-up is must, because it costing you, so make sure the cost-benefit analysis, that the cost should be lower than introduction of the ABC costing system. Now, there is a company, Brass Company, they said ABC is not a magic bullet, but it is a tool to help you understand your business better. So it's not simply a solution of all the problem. No, it helps you to understand your business properly, better, so that you can manage it properly and costing it properly. Now, the cost pool in any, let's say, organization, if it's a production business, do remember, if it's a production business, number one is the machine-related setups. Let me explain you what is these setups things. If you look at any lathe machine operation, so you go and ask them that do this job for us. So what they do, they have the lathe machine, and there is various parts of that machine. So before they start working on your job, they have to adjust their machine. And once they adjust the machine, they have the pulleys and they have the chakkas and all those things. What they do, they have adjust first, and then they put the raw material and then start working on it. So these are the setups cost, and it is again taking time. It's not simply that you put the raw material and start working. No, you have to adjust your machine. So that is basically the setups. Similarly, purchasing material and handling. It's not simply that you place an order, you receive the material. No, before placing an order, we ask for the quotation, we select the supplier, then we place an order, then the order will be executed and send it, and the material will come, and then we'll receive it, and we prepare certain let's say documents on this. So all these, similarly when the material is received, then it is going to be issued to the factory. All these activities grouped together, and it is, say, material purchase and handlings. Then quality assurance, inspection. Now, currently, people believe that inspection cost should be minimized. How it is very, very difficult. But in China and Japan, etc., what they do, they believe in zero defect system, that there should not be any defect. Before the defect arises and then inspection start, no, they say try to avoid this inspection cost, because it's not value added, because inspection is after the production. So after the production, the cost so this is an additional cost. So they said try to avoid this cost. Then packing and shipping. Packing, again, different types of packing, small packing, large packing, containers and so on. And similarly shipping also. So we have this another department, another cost pool, that is the shipping. Engineering design. This is always there, because in a production department, always there is an engineering drawings and etc. and that is another cost pool. Then facilitation. In the facilitation case, you got accounting department, you got let's say human resource department, you got advertising department, and so many other departments which are related to your production. So we club together all them to put them together, or maybe we can again keep them separate too, but it all depends how much you can afford, that how many activities, cost pool, you can work it out. Then cost drivers. Now, in case of a machine, hours, number of setups are going to be the cost drivers. Then number of purchase order. I'm talking about those cost pool which I've just discussed. Number of purchase order, material acquisition. Material acquisition is when the material is required by the factory, they raise a requisition, and you are going to take out that acquisition, go to the storeroom, take out the material, send it to the factory, and so on. Number of inspection, meaning how many inspections you do, in the process of production or even after the production. Then number of orders dispatched. So we use the number of orders in case of shipping cost and the dispatch cost. Engineering hours, designing and all that, how much time which is required. So these engineering hours can be a cost driver. Now let us discuss an illustration comparing the traditional costing and the ABC costing. Now there are a company and they are producing three models, Model 1, Model 2 and Model 3. The number of units they are going to produce 10,000, 20,000 and 4,000. The one run of 10,000 units, which mean that if they are producing 10,000 units, it means in only one run is required. And once you set a machine and that machine will produce you 10,000 units. So for Model 2 is concerned, you need to produce 20,000 units and 4 runs of 5,000 units. There, each run will produce 5,000 units, so you need 4 runs to do. Similarly, in Model 3, you got 4,000 units and 10 runs of 400 units. So this is how the production and the runs required. Now, to produce one Model 1, Model 2, Model 3, the direct material cost is per unit, to remember, 50, 90 and 20. So direct labor is 60 for Model 1, 80 for Model 2 and 40 to Model 3. And overheads added to Model 1, 99 and Model 2, 132 and Model 3, 66. If you add these three costs, Model 1 cost you 209 per unit and Model 2 cost you 302 per unit and 126 Model 3 cost you. So this is the traditional costing. Now if you work it out on ABC costing, unit produce 10,000 for 1, 20,000 and 4,000. So direct labor hours per unit is 3, 4 and 2. So these details are there. So the total hours comes to 30,000, 80,000 and 8,000. So it comes to 118,000. Now if you work it out the rate which is used in traditional costing, the total overheads for the entire organization is 3,894,000 and total hours are 118,000. So the rate per labor hour is 33. So we use this 33 rate to absorb overhead in traditional costing. If you look at Model 1 required 3 hours, so 33 by 3, 99 hours. And we require 4 hours in Model 2, so 33 multiplied by 4, it comes to 132. And in case of Model 3, we need only 2 hours and the rate is 33, so 66. So this is how the overhead is absorbed in traditional costing. Now, if we go further, that in case we need to find out the total cost, it is calculated that 209, 302 and 126. And let's say target price set at the rate of 25% on cost. So if you look at it, that the price will be, selling price will be 209 multiplied by 125 or 377.5 and 126 multiplied by 125, it comes to 157.50. So this is how in traditional costing the price is determined. Now if we go by ABC costing, so first of all we need to identify the activities cost pool and then we work out the rates for each activity. Now there are 8 basically activity pools in it. So the total overheads of 3,894,000, we divided them into 8 activities. Now I'm going to one by one activity. Number 1 is machinery cost pool. So in a machine cost pool, we got total budgeted cost 1,212,600. Do remember, the total overheads are going to be allocated on activity pool. So first activity pool is machine cost pool and the budgeted overhead out of the total is 1,212,600. Now divide this machine cost pool cost by the cost driver, that is 43,000 machine hours. So the rate comes to 28.2 per hour. Now in case of Model 1, they use 1 machine hour, so the overhead absorbed in Model 1 is 28.2. In case of Model 2, they absorbed 1.25 hours, so the overhead will be absorbed 35.25 per unit. In Model 3, it is 28 rupees per hour and multiplied by 2 because they require 2 machine hours to produce 1 unit of Model 3. Now the second cost pool is setup cost pool, and the overhead for this setup cost pool is just 3,000. So if you work out the rate, budgeted setup cost 3,000 and divided by 15 runs, because 1 run in required of Model A, 4 runs required Model 2, and 10 runs required Model 3. So the rate comes to 200 per runs. So 3,000 divided by 15 runs, the rate is 200 per run. So Model 1 will go 200 by 1 divided by units. If you work out number of units, so that comes to 10,000. So per unit is 0.02. Please let me explain you further that the rate is 200 per run and each run produce 10,000 units. And Model 1 require only 1 run. So 200 per run divided by the units they produce. So Model 1 will charge only 2 paisa per unit. So for Model 2 is concerned, they require 4 runs. So each run is of 5,000. So each run rate is 200. So divide by 5,000. So it comes to 4 paisa. In case of Model 3, it's 200 and 1 run produce 400 units. So rate is 50 paisa. So this is how we work out per cost pool rate and then allocate on each of these 3 products. Now next cost pool is, that is number 3, engineering cost pool, and the total budgeted cost 700,000. Now what is basically in this cost pool? Engineering salaries, engineering supplies, engineering software, depreciation, etc. And again, the rate is going to be calculated based on number of units produced, and he said 25% for Model 1, 45% for Model 2, and 30% for Model 3. So what they did, 700,000, 25% of it. And how many units you produce Model 1? 10,000. So the rate comes to 17.5. In case of Model 2, 45% of 700,000 divided by 20,000 units. So it comes to 15.75. In case of Model 3, 30% of 700,000 divided by 4,000, it comes to 52.5. So this is how the engineering cost pool overhead will be charged to all these 3 units. Then the next is facility cost pool. Now this facility cost pool, we have the plant department, plant management, plant maintenance, property taxes, insurance, security, and so on. This includes in one cost pool, facility cost pool. And the total cost allocated is 507,400, and rate is going to be calculated direct labor hours. So 507,400 divided by direct labor hours. Now if we divide this total cost by 118,000 hours, the rate comes to 4 rupees and 30 paisa. Now question is how these 118,000 hours are there. You know 10,000 units you produce for Model 1, then the Model 2, Model 3. What you do, multiply number of units by the hours required, direct labor hours required. So total comes to 118,000 hours. Now how much cost is going to be absorbed in Model 1, 2 and 3? Let's see, if the rate is 4.3 and 3 hours are required for Model 1, so total comes to 12.90. In Model 2, you need 4 hours, so if you multiply by 4.3, it comes to 17.2. And in case of Model 3, the hours required is 2, so if you multiply by 4.3 by 2, it comes to 8.6. So this is the 4 cost centers or cost pool where the cost per units have been added. Now the other overheads. Now there are 4 cost pools in this. Number 1 is the receiving and inspection cost pool. Receiving and inspection cost pool, first of all, let's see the overheads. Overhead is 200,000, 200,000 and 200,000. And the percentage usage, when the services they are using of each model is using, 6% is used by Model A and 24% is used by Model 2 and 70% is used by model 3. So what we do, we take 6%, 24% and 70%, right? And then we work out the unit cost. So 6% if you take 200,000, it comes to only 12,000. So 12,000 divided by 10,000, the rate comes to 1.2. And similarly for model 2, model 3, we can work it out the rate per unit. Now when it goes to material handling cost pool, here the total overheads for that cost pool is 600,000. And the services required in percentage term, 7%, 30%, 63%. So what we do, we take 7% of 600,000 and divide by the number of units we produce in model 1, that is 10,000. And similarly for 2 and for 3, you can work it out per unit overhead absorbed. Then the third one is the quality assurance cost pool, and overhead incur is 421,000, and time required or other services percentage is 20%, 40% and 40%. So if you take the 20% of 400,000 and divide by 10,000, you will get the per unit overhead cost 8.42. Similarly, in case of packaging and shipping, the overheads allocated are 250,000 in total, and the services utilized by these three models, 4% to model 1, and then 30 and 66%. So you take the 4%, divide by 10,000, you get the figure 1 rupee. Now, if we add all these four, so we have already worked out that how much of those first four, cost pool, unit cost, overhead cost, and then these four. So if you go further, you can see here direct material is there, direct labor is there for all the three. It is the same as we have the in traditional case, but setup 2 paisa, 4 paisa, 50 paisa, engineering 17.5, 15.75, and then 52.5, and facilities 12.9 and 17.2 and 8.6, and others 14.82, 23.57 and 212.85. So the total cost now comes to 183.44, 261.81, 390.85. And if you recall the previous one, the traditional one cost was 209, and now in ABC the cost is 183.44. In model 2 it was 302 in traditional one, and in ABC costing it is 261.81. In case of model 3 it was 126, and in ABC case 390.85. Now try to understand here, the total overheads are the same in traditional as well as in ABC, but the problem was allocating those overhead over these three models. And you can see here, in traditional we are just charging you 126. 126 is the total cost including material labor overhead, but in ABC it comes to 390.85. Now this difference technically called distortion. So if there is a lot of distortion, obviously pricing is the problem. Now look into the pricing. Original price was 261.25, in traditional 377.5, 157.5, and ABC we caught it. Again you have to multiply 1.25 because 25% profit you add on to the cost. So look here, if you multiply by ABC costing 183.44, model 1 at 1.2, that comes to 229.30. It's clear from there that in traditional costing you are overcharging to your customer, while in ABC costing its selling price should be 229. So that's why the problem is. And in case of model 3, you can see you charging 157 and the costing is you 488. So it means you're losing over there because you're supposed to sell it at 488 but you're selling at 157. The possibility is there that you may not be covering your cost in that case. So ABC costing definitely helping you in setting the selling price, and that's why we prefer, rather than using plant-wide rate or departmental rate or single rate or let's say multiple rate, go for ABC costing, work out the pool, and then work out the drivers and find out the per driver cost, and accordingly you allocate your cost over the various products, and you will come across that the It's a better costing, it's better price setting. Another illustration I can explain it to you in detail. That was the example which is taken from the book, that a company manufactured two products, standard and enhanced, and applies overhead on the basis of direct labor hours. Anticipated overheads and direct labor time for the upcoming accounting periods are 800,000 and 25,000 respectively. Information about the company's product as follows. Standard, estimated production volume is 3,000 units and direct material cost is 25 per unit and direct labor hours 3 at the rate of 12 per hour. Enhanced case, estimated production volume is 4,000 units and direct material cost is 40 rupees per unit and direct labor per unit is 4 hours and 12 rupees per hour. So this is how the data is. Now the overheads are 800,000, can be identified with three major activities. You see, total is 800,000, plant wise is 800,000. But now let's put it into cost pool wise. Now there are three major activities they have decided. Order processing, that is 150,000, and then machine processing, that is 560,000, and product inspection is 90,000, and these activities are driven by number of drivers. Machine hours worked and inspection hours worked. Orders processed, machine hours worked, and inspection hours. So let me explain you once again that there are three cost pool. Number one is your machine processing, order processing, and product inspection. Similarly, there are three cost drivers for orders numbers, then machine hours, and the inspection hours. So we work out order process 300 for standards and 200 hours for enhanced. Similarly, machine hours worked for standard 18,000 hours and 22,000 hours. Inspection hours 2,000 and 8,000. Total is 500, 40,000 and 10,000. Let's work it out. The management is very concerned about declining profitability despite a healthy increase in sales volume. The decrease in income is especially puzzling because the company recently undertook a massive plant renovation during which new highly automated machinery was installed. Machinery that was expected to produce significant efficiencies. Now the requirement of the question is simply assume use of direct labor hours to apply overhead to production, compute the unit manufacturing cost, and standard or enhanced if the expected manufacturing volume is attained. Now this is traditional. And assuming activity-based costing, compute the unit manufacturing cost and standard enhanced product if the expected manufacturing volume is attained. So let's see how the traditional costing is done. Now budgeted overheads in total is 800,000 and the budgeted labor hours are 25,000. So rate comes to 32,000 per direct labor hour. Now how many labor hours are used by standard? That is 3. So direct material, direct labor is clearly given. So for overheads are concerned, 3 by 32, 96 and 4 by 32 comes to 128. So the cost is 157 and 216 in case of traditional. In activity base, 3 activities: order processing, machine processing and inspection. And the total overheads of 800,000 allocated to order processing 150 and machining 560 and inspection 90. So divide it by the number of cost drivers, 500 for number of orders and then 40,000 machine hours and then inspections are 10. So the rate comes to 300 per order, 14 per machine hours and 9 per inspection. So in standard, how they are going to be allocated, multiplying by the number of drivers of standards and enhanced. So if you multiply, the figure comes to 90. So for order processing, then in machine processing it comes to 252 and 308, and in case of inspection 18,000 and 72,000. Look, total overheads of standards and enhanced again comes to 800,000. Now you got the allocation for standard and enhanced. Now we work out the per unit. So divide by the number of units produced, 360,000, and we produce 3,000 units, so it comes to 120 per unit. In case of enhanced, it is 440 divided by 4,000 units, it comes to 110. And if you allocate it, it comes to 25, material same, and labor also the same, overhead is 120 and 118. So the cost total is 181 and 198. Now, if you compare the cost now, standard labor base rate 156 and 217 enhanced. In case of activity base, it is 181 and 198. In case of standard, we have been charging 156 in traditionally, but it comes to 181 when we use ABC costing. It is clear that we are under costing the standard unit, and so far enhanced is concerned, we have been charging 217, while in ABC it comes to 198, so it is overcharging, overcosting by 18. So now you can see that ABC costing give us the accurate costing, and from there we can work out the accurate cost, accurate sale price also. Now, if you have the detailed costing, proper detailed costing, and in case you have some claim later on, or maybe you can defend your case with the supplier, with the consumer, with the buyer, with the customers. And one thing is important, that it costs you, the cost benefit should also be kept in mind before we conclude that we should go for ABC or not, because it is a costing exercise, and if you are ready to bear the cost, definitely the benefit is going to be there. And normally in Pakistan, people are trying to look into the cost. They are trying to find out how to reduce the cost, how to save cost, and ABC definitely going to help them out, provided they take it seriously and the management wants it to be implemented in total. ABC कॉस्टिंग अभी हमने कंक्लूड की है, तो आपने नोट किया होगा कि इसमें जो कॉस्ट फैक्टर है, जो कॉस्ट डिटर्मिनेशन है, दैट इज़ द मोस्ट इम्पॉर्टेंट थिंग. इफ़ यू वर्क आउट द प्रॉपर कॉस्ट and then set a selling price, later on you will not have a problem with your customer, because if you overcharge them, they will run away. If you are undercharge them, again you will sustain losses, because you may not be covering your fixed cost. So that's why ABC costing is important for the sake of determining the right cost. But it is all needed by the top management if they are interested to implement it and ready to pay the cost of it. But make sure the benefit and the cost should always be compared. If the benefit is greater and the cost is lower, then it is only workable that the ABC costing should be implemented. In case of limited resources, we are very, very clear that the cost of those limiting resources we should use effectively, efficiently, so that our cost should be minimized and our selling price should also be rationalized. And this is how the ABC costing can help us out in determining the right cost and the right sale price. Thank you very much, and we'll see inshallah next time with the new topics.